Good evening, and welcome to the second episode of Rogue Goes Rogue. Yay! I'm Rogue by name and Rogue by nature, the wild child that was born to defy. We need more people to stand up and rebuke the narrative that we are being told. The narrative that doesn't make sense and the rhetoric that makes us second guess ourselves. Political gaslighting is the only thing that we know at the moment, and it's throwing us into a state of confusion. Are you worn down? Are you tired of the constant political cycle of lies and setups that we're having to face daily? The theatrical curtain that opens with another story and dramatic headline? If the answer is yes, then they are winning. So tonight, I'd like for you guys to sit back and observe by weighing up what tonight's guest has to say. Before we're spoon-fed from staunch supporters of either party, so I'm going to ask if we can please refrain from any negativity in the comments. Catherine Blaiklock founded the Brexit Party in 2019. She served as the party's leader for 63 days and she later joined Reform UK but left in 2025, shortly after Rupert Slow's suspension. Now, we all understood that. We understood that that was really bad. But then Lowe decided to launch Restore Britain in early 2026, positioning it further right than even advance, with policies like the death penalty, referendum, strict border controls and demographic security. Catherine joined Restore and avidly championed their policies and backed Rupert, even to the point of slamming Ben Habib for his public blasts of Restore and Rupert. Her recent resignation condemns Restore's leadership, commenting on their chaos, ignored members, bullying and possible fund mismanagement, and even compares Restore, which is quite a feat, as a stronger version of Advance, but with better policies, but with exactly the same internal problems. This highlights fundamental issue with Restore: a lack of professional structure, despite ambitious goals, and a claimed 90,000 members. Now, regarding Reform and Restore, a collaboration, it could unite the right, yes? Letting Reform's broader appeal and infrastructure merge with Restore's hardline energy and low social media reach. But also, it could be a disaster, splitting the right-wing vote and letting Labour win by default, as seen in recent by-elections. The real danger, guys, is that both parties end up fighting for the same voters whilst Labour watches from the sidelines. Catherine's exit shows the cracks are already forming. If Reform and Restore can't find a way to work together, or at least agree not to tear each other down, then the right risks handing the next election to the same people that they've been trying to replace. Now, I think it's really important to introduce Catherine and her departure from Restore, but understanding it's a stark warning for the British right. It shows that even with strong ideas, with solid foundations, things can. Catherine Blaiklock. Hello, my lovely. How are you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Lovely to see you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad to see you. So I met you a few years ago and thoroughly enjoyed your company. And we were at an event in Wales, and you know, you're strong, you're a woman that has a tenacity about you, and I love to listen to you. Now, before we go any further, because I really want to hear your side, I want to hear your story, because ultimately we all have the right to speak up and say what is actually happening and what we've experienced. But before we do that, what I'd like to do is just go to the very beginning where Rupert and Farage have had their spat, and Rupert said he would never, ever work with Farage again.
I will never work with Nigel Farage again, or indeed Richard Tice, particularly Anderson, or Mohammed Ziauddin Yusuf.
So he said that, and then Farage responded at the time when he actually set up Restore.
You know, people think, oh, Farage has done it. We'll just set a party up. It'll be marvellous. We'll sweep the next election. It just isn't as easy as that. Now, does he have a profile on X? Yes, he does. Is Elon going to support him? Probably. But you see, you know, when he stood up and said that we've got to consider the mass deportation of entire communities, including those born in the United Kingdom, that just moves way beyond a point of reasonableness, of decency, of morality. And that was the moment at which, you know, I realised we just had to get rid of him, and get rid of him as quickly as we could. And I think in terms of the way we dealt with that, we were probably more brutal than the other parties. But you know what? That's the way it's going to be. Thank you.
So my question to you actually, first and foremost, is did you see this coming? Because I didn't. I was completely blindsided by this. And I just want to know if you saw this coming.
Absolutely stunned. Really stunned.
Yeah. I mean, it just came out of nowhere. And I'm sort of sat there going, hey? And again, the other question is, were his members consulted? Because I don't know if they were. Do you know?
No, they wouldn't have been consulted at all. And I'm not even convinced that senior people in the party were consulted. I believe that they were told, you know, that's very similar to things that have gone on in Reform as well.
Yeah. I mean, you've experienced both of them. You know, you've been in...
Yeah, but my experience with, and I know people sort of talking about me jumping from one party to the other. I didn't want to leave the Brexit Party. I mean, I absolutely did not want to leave. I held on and fought as long as that was reasonable, because basically I was far too right wing for Nigel at that point. And I was saying all the things in 2000, I'd said them in 2016 to 2019 that are now being talked about generally, about the Islamification, about the Great Replacement, you know, about not being strangers in our own country, and the violence and the crime and the rape and all the associated things with it. So I did not want to leave Reform at all, as it was the Brexit Party at all.
But your hand was forced, right?
Well, I could have just hung on and done lawsuits and kept the shares and the rest of it. But at the end of the day, I decided it was actually for the best part for the country, because the European elections were coming up, that I did.
Yeah.
Well, I handed my shares over. I mean, effectively, I handed the shares over than the bank accounts. It was a very different struck thing. But I did not want to leave. I would have worked really hard for Nigel and Reform as it latter became.
I mean, you know, when Ben Habib started speaking out and did his video very similar to how Rupert has done it, everybody was lambasting him, just saying, do it behind closed doors. Even Rupert was saying that. Do it behind closed doors. Hide, you know, this shouldn't be in public. And it's right. We shouldn't do things like this in public unless it's for theatre, you know, unless it's for a show, unless it's to evoke a reaction. Now, I was really shocked when Ben was kind of behaving in the way that he was. And now what I find really hypocritical is that Rupert is doing the same. Now, I'm going to show you some videos quickly just in regard to Ben Habib, and then we'll come back to this.
Yeah.
The key for me is making sure the country is safe. I don't care whether it's Advance, Reform, Conservatives, or Rupert's new party, whatever it is he's launched. I'm going to look at what he's launched, and if it is the right answer, then he will have my total support.
So you're considering it there? We can
I will
announce
consider
that.
anything. Listen, I was deputy leader of Reform. I don't want to be leader of Advance. Advance shouldn't exist. Reform should have done the right thing. What I care about is the country. That's the only thing I care about, making sure we get the solutions that restores this country to what it once was.
Well, you better.
So ultimately, I mean, I don't see men with Rupert. So while they're all talking about the good of the country, egos get in the way. And, when men, and I'm not being sexist at all, but somehow when men come together, there is this kind of level of, sort of needing to be that alpha male. I need to be that alpha male. I need to kind of stand up and my way's right, your way's right. Actually, that isn't helping the country. We need to drop ego. We need to drop the alpha male, and we need to start working collectively, because it is about the collective that will only endorse and force something to happen in a positive way. I mean, if you look at the left, they have everything totally teed up, and they just work succinctly. They just do it so well. And yet the right just fight. And it's kind of embarrassing now, because we just need for each and every one of us to be able to, express an opinion, express an experience without having a lambasting. Like, you are speaking out and yet you are getting a whole lot of hate. How does that make you feel?
It doesn't make me feel anything, because I don't care and I don't read it, and I know the reasons why I did things, because things like in advance are not right in Restore. There's a lot of things not right, and I'm sure there's lots of things currently not right in Reform too. The only party, ironically, that I think things are better in terms of structure and management, but who have terrible, not very strong policies, are the Conservatives, who do have, because they're so old, proper structures about how to recruit people, how to interview people, how to have selection panels for posts and things, because they've got hundreds of years of experience of it. But obviously they have weak policies. But so, yes, I accept these things. And just going back to what you were talking about, men, I see Rupert and Nigel as having very similar characteristics. They're like two big alpha males, So that's why there's this enormous clash. I mean, what happens when they get together, and then, unless Nigel, of course, leaves, is what happens when Rupert wants to be leader again? Because I think that was sort of effectively what was going on last time when he put something out in the Daily Mail.
You see, trust has been broken, and trust is so, so important, right? In any kind of relationship, whether it's a friendship, mother, daughter, family, or even, a lover's relationship, we have to have trust, because once trust has been completely obliterated, then what happens is there's always this paranoia, there's always this concern or this worry. And with how it has been with Rupert and Farage, how can they ever work together on the basis that there is no foundation of trust? They're always going to be watching their own backs, and it's going to become this paranoid state.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I mean, I desperately want, and I thought about it, especially through Makerfield and after Makerfield, about this split, and I defended Restore very heavily all the way to the people in Reform, and many of my friends who were saying this is potentially a catastrophe. As it was, Reform didn't get enough votes for it to be a catastrophe. Andy Burnham would have won anyway, but there was always this potential that it was going to be a catastrophe. And so, I was really concerned about it, and the reality still is, as of this moment, that Restore have the good policies and Reform have the voters. And as a friend of mine said tonight, most Reform voters won't even know this has happened. Because it's really, apart from if you read a little bit in the Telegraph or you're really on X, you won't really know this is happening.
I mean, X dominates, doesn't it? But then I had friends that didn't even know about Restore, like literally had no clue who Restore were. And I'm like, where have you been? And obviously X dominates people's lives, and that's where we get all of our information from. And if people aren't on social media, they're not going to have that input. So your friend is completely right, and it's really important that Restore kind of know that also. But I think from the actual by-elections, I think that's kind of been highlighted. They haven't been as successful as they thought they would be, which is a shame, because like you said, they have got really good policies. They know, what is important for our country. And I just want to quickly go back to Ben, because what I found was that when Rupert wasn't responding, he got a little bit sour quite quickly, because what he felt was that he'd put his kind of all out there, and he'd spoken out. And then all of a sudden, 9 days, he's not had anything back. And so because he hadn't got anything back, then there becomes this kind of aggro, and he's starting to attack. So let's have a look at this video quickly.
It's been 9 days since Rupert Lowe declared he was going to convert Restore Britain from a movement to a political party. And it's been 8 days since I made an open offer on air to Rupert Lowe to consider a merger with Advance UK. I've had no response to that open offer. The only response made was in public by Rupert Lowe on X, in which he said I and members of Advance UK would be free to join Restore Britain. But here's the issue, Rupert. I don't know what Restore Britain is. I've had a look at your website, but there's no draft constitution there. Nothing setting out how the leadership is appointed, how the leadership is held to account, how policies are made, how people to your policy-making committees are appointed, how you're going to set up your national network, how people are going to be recruited into the party. None of this is clear on your website. There's no draft constitutional document. The only document about which I'm aware are the Articles of Association of your country, what you've got on Companies House, and that shows a company limited by one share, private limited company, limited by one share which you own, Rupert. You are the owner and dictator of Restore Britain.
I mean, that was quite a, he put it right out there. And I think at that point you lambasted him, because you were like, hang on a minute, how dare you, start speaking out about this when actually you're a flop anyway. Let's look at your numbers. Let's look at what's really going on. But then, I don't know if you remember, there was a leaked message. Actually, I was in the group chat and I heard it. It was not me. I just would like to put that out there. But there was a leaked message where Ben talks about Restore. Have a listen to this.
Hi, John, just ignore it. Restore Britain have gone full tilt racist and will continue.
So we go from he's extended his hand and then it's like full tilt racist. And it's almost like, again, he spat his dummy out. He's having a tantrum because he wasn't heard, he wasn't listened to, and he all of a sudden has become extra irrelevant, and that's a real blow to the ego.
Can I just say something else? That
yeah.
Subsequent to that, Ben went right back again around the Makerfield time, before the Makerfield election, and offered Restore quite a lot of money. And I don't know the details of it, but the comment that came out was, we saw Ben off. So again, both sides effectively, Ben went back to Restore to negotiate, and then Restore rejected Ben. So, these things have been going on for ages. But Ben is quite right about the issue, particularly the issue of lack of accountability, and basically that in Restore, and that basically just any person who happens to be around, who happens to be a young guy who's a councillor or something, is suddenly put in as a regional organiser, with nobody, including all the branch organisers, have no say and are not allowed to apply for the job. And that, of course, has upset quite a lot of people.
Well, of course. Yeah.
So, it's not that people don't get chosen, but that I didn't want to do it. I absolutely didn't want to do it. And I ended up as a branch organiser and didn't want to be a branch organiser. I mean, that was the irony from my position, was that got shoved into it right at the beginning and really don't want to do it, because being a branch organiser is basically a glorified leaflet delivery organising service and a tea party. And whilst I can do it, I would almost got to the point where I said I'd rather raise the money or give the money and get the leaflets delivered, just get them done. Because, because my interest has been in writing and investigations more latterly. It's not been on that type of thing. But, what Ben was quite right about that. But the other thing I'd make about his racist point was that people are so upset about what's happened that they're moving much, much more right now than they were in 2016 in Brexit period. The change is like palpable.
Yeah.
So, I think that everybody on the right has shifted right. So that, I think, as well, is where Farage is still, to I think, a large extent in sort of Brexit type 219 politics, and the world has moved on quite significantly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've seen an awful lot, just what's happened in Morocco. And I mean, I don't know how many people are there, you're trying to count it. And then you have MSM telling you one thing, we've got Callum and James over there from Vox Populi actually sort of on the ground at the moment. And they're just saying that there's fires happening there. There's murders, there's stabbings. It's horrific. And these guys are coming over to our country. So like you said, if Farage is kind of still stuck a little bit in sort of like centre right, and then we've got, Rupert, who is full on, this is that, we are not budging.
I would argue Rupert is not completely full on.
Okay.
That's been a split in the party, because you don't see that particularly, but between the Zoomers, the Charlie Downs of the world, and Rupert. So Rupert will be considered, I mean, for example, Rupert has made statements like multiculturalism is fine. What about, if they're all decent people? And other people are saying, no, multiculturalism is not fine and never will be fine.
When you say people, do you mean the members, or do you mean the kind of advisors?
I'm talking about people on X, members, commentators, whoever you'd like to have. I think so. Yeah, and there's definitely been significant. I mean, and there's a broad spectrum in Restore as well. Maybe not quite as broad as. It's pretty broad. I mean, you've got people who, like Steve Laws, who would like to have every single person of any colour, including everybody Jewish, deported effectively. He has relented that saying mixed race people might not be, but
that's nice of him.
People who are, really, don't like reform for various reasons, or the Conservatives, but and again you have splits on economics as to whether you have quite a number of people in the Zoomers who are effectively Green Party renationalisation, but don't think immigrants are taking jobs and opportunity and causing crime and lack of identity and all those sort of things. So so there are some more further. The fact is, I mean, for example, one of the things that was interesting in Rupert's statement was when he's made another one, although it's probably Alistair Harrison writing it, of course, it's not Rupert, but on X, about talking about white people. Whereas we know, I mean, you probably remember when Saskia was basically barred from attending because she used the word white. So that seems to have sort of moved on a little bit as well.
I mean, I'm just looking at some of your tweets, and I mean, you started your tweets sort of like yesterday saying Restore have made a load of unforced errors and have bad management and have ended up as a stronger version of Advance, but with better policies, but exactly the same sort of internal problems. Now, if you look at the problems in Advance and what was happening, it was one particular person was running the show. It was Ben's sidekick. And so what you're saying is that actually Rupert isn't really running the show. Now, I had a question from a gentleman yesterday, and I did send it to you. And the question was, is it true that Alistair is running Restore behind the scenes? Can you tell us your thoughts?
I would say 110%. He is doing the work of about 5 people. I mean, let me give Alistair credit where it's due. He works unbelievably hard. He does the work of 5 people, and he writes all those tweets. So he's sort of galvanized but a lot of things. So let's give him credit for that. But he is doing the job of 5 to 10 people. He controls everything. And so effectively, because one person cannot control everything, if anything goes to Alistair Harrison, it becomes a black hole because he can't cope with it. Say you have a multiple things, and also Rupert, will not take any criticism whatsoever about Alistair Harrison. So, this has caused a lot of problems all over the place.
I mean, that's very similar to Ben, actually. Ben would not take any criticism about his particular sidekick. And if there was that criticism or email sent in, the emails would be sent to the said person to write back about themselves. I mean, it just wasn't fair. It wasn't just. Now, Alistair, I have to say that I actually have had conversations with him, and I found him very pleasant. I found him very astute. He understood, the political sphere. He understood what was going on. He was very kind of open, and I kind of, have a respect for him like yourself. He is running, if he is running the show completely, and he's doing a marvelous job. Let's face it, he is basically doing it single-handedly. He's got his team of guys, around him, but you can't handle everything by yourself, like you said, because otherwise it gets lost. You need to be able to distribute, and you need to be able to hand to certain people to actually build the force. Now, did you ever see that, or do you think it was just a one-man show just trying to push forward? And could it be better if you were to actually distribute the jobs?
Well, I think the question is that these parties seem to be flung together at a moment's notice with no strategy. I mean, if you are Apple Computers or McDonald's and you're going to come into the UK into a competitive market or something where you're the underdog, you need to be really good. You need to have really good strategy, not just good policies, but a building process. And you don't start opening, I mean, even McDonald's wouldn't come in here, or Five Guys, and open 650 branches on day one. They would choose strategic areas. I personally think that they made a disastrous decision to do it that way, that they should have chosen the board, appointed the people who were going to do the spokes thing and manage various things, AI, IT, personnel, etc., and then maybe go into either regional or go into county level. Even at county level, you could have 60 county level, and then those people build a base, and then you start to go down from there. Trying to run the logistics of 650 people. You look at their website, it's a mess. The offers that they've had that just don't go anywhere, the money that they've been offered, and the technical skills that they just don't take. And one of the reasons they don't take them is because they don't trust anybody at all. And the second reason is that they are basically, they're all working at home. They don't have an office. So they're like working at home. Some people, like a couple of people, do all the work, are just crazed. And other people don't do so much work, and everything is sort of on the hoof. And you can't get things. And then there's lots of jockeying because there's lots of young guys there who've got really not a lot else in their life. 25-year-olds who've not really, now this is their big chance, they might become an MP or something. And it's sort of like, that's what it's like. It's actually not like Reform or the Brexit Party, because Reform had, obviously Nigel had been involved with running parties for a very, very long time. So yeah, that's why I think it's a lot more scatty, and and it causes, and there's just been sort of all sorts of outbreaks and issues and problems. And I mean, one person in Wales said that that for every 2-3 branch organisers he picked, 2 resigned. It's not just, it's lots and lots of them. There are people with no leaflets, of people with no access to emails, people with no access to the website, and so on and so on and so on. So that sort of jumble and mess is going on at the same time as these sort of big overtures. And I'm just really surprised. We'll go back to that, but about the overture, because really the view was, we would be better. We would actually attempt to put up the best possible candidates with the best possible AI and IT. I know Restore are just getting started, but the point is that if you were designing, as I said, to come into Five Guys, you wouldn't start by putting 10,000 restaurants everywhere with no management and no structure above. You'd do it the other way round. So the other question as an underdog that I would have as well is, like, why are they not picking off local elections where they have got strong bases that they could win some local elections, rather than doing these high profile events? Because doing the high profile events does make sense if you actually think that you're not there for the long term. You're only there to catch Nigel's eye. And that does make sense. But if you were there for the long term to build, then you would do it the other way around.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've sort of written, other tweets saying, of course I'm going to lose followers, but Restore Britain is nepotistic, misogynistic mess. It's on the hoof, drunk boys down the pub, and Rupert in his vegetable patch, and plenty of bullying and rudeness to go with it. No structure, no advertising of jobs, no thank yous to anybody. Now, I mean, you're not the first person to say the word misogyny. And I have to kind of look at that. So I've had a woman sort of reach out to me. Now, again, I can only speak and say what she said. I'm apolitical. I'm not listening. I'm just hearing what people are saying. She went to a meeting and she sat there, and then they accused her of all sorts. They accused her of taking photos and videos, and they said, we don't like that. We don't want that. And, as a woman, you shouldn't be doing that. And it was like there was a lot of things kind of honing on the fact that she was a female. And that might not be everywhere, and it might be just one case. But you've raised that word. Can you tell me why?
Yeah, I think that it's a total boys' club. I think that many of the people would actually like women not to be involved in politics at all or have the vote. So, and I understand, and I'm not a feminist, and I understand why many men feel that they have been totally betrayed, because it's part of the same DEI process. But we are in the position we are, where women do have the vote, and they are over 50% of the population. I thought the way Saskia was treated was particularly bad. And again, she was a woman. I don't know whether I should answer that question.
No, I'd like to know. Would you? Would you go to Reform if asked?
Well, again, I have never fallen out with Nigel, despite, really, I don't feel, but I mean, it was political, and I was really angry about it politically. If Nigel really started to have serious policies on immigration, remigration, deportations, yes, I think I would. I just we'll finish on this other point, was so yeah, I mean, there are no women whatsoever in the store, none, basically.
I mean, there's Ola. I mean, she's there.
Ola's put in as the women's, the women's rights. Yeah, well, you have a woman for women's rights, but that's it. Yeah. You would know, so there are effectively no women. There are women. I don't think. I think if we, and I expect in a right-wing party it only to be about 10%, but it may be 15, 20, but it's way less than that. And if you take the regional organisers, I think there's one woman
Right.
out of like
That's not many at all.
30. But she's sort of some friend of somebody who's, I don't know how she got involved in. But the other issue is the friends. So the friends of Alistair, that's effectively, I mean, Alistair just completely ignored me. He never said a word to me. But he'd be chatty to Henry Bolton, and so Alistair basically chooses people who he likes. I can quote from Paul Weston again. This was with Rupert. I mean, I think Paul Weston is one of the great minds of British politics on Islam. He's enormously bright. And basically, Rupert said, "Well, I don't know you very well," and then he just doesn't get a call back. So, but then you put in, Alistair's wife or Alistair's sister. They all work for Restore. And it's more likely that you're going to get a job because, but Farage has done that as well. I mean, Farage appointed Henry Bolton because he or put him forward as a candidate because he met him on a train. So, I mean, this is
as you do.
Yeah. But this is, for positions like regional organizer, even for branch organizers, especially when those branch organizers may become the parliamentary candidates, I think it's quite important that they are properly, that there's competition for those things and they're really considered and properly advertised, etc.
But if you said that people aren't trusting within Restore, they won't hand it over to anybody because they don't trust them, that then is going to be reflected in their choices, right?
Well, it really obviously becomes a big issue as well with some sort of merger with other parties, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely that
issue. But yeah, I mean, things like AI, use of AI and use of IT, they've had so many offers for apps and things. They still haven't produced an app and they've still got a terrible website because effectively they just employ somebody in their bedroom.
But Elon has totally endorsed them and is like supporting them, but it's gone a bit quiet of late. Have you noticed that? Is there any reason why?
I don't know what happened in America.
Okay.
One of the I've heard things about that happened in America, but I'm not convinced that Joe Rogan went particularly well. And then Elon went quiet, and there's even dispute about whether they met Elon or didn't meet Elon.
Right. So I've noticed it's gone quiet. So if I've noticed it's gone quiet, then everybody else is going to notice that there's been a little bit of a step back, which is exactly what happened with Advance. Now, I find that Elon, bless your heart, you're a little bit fickle, mate. You jump from one person to another. You endorse so-and-so and then so-and-so, and then everybody starts kind of like, yes, we're our leader's being endorsed. We thought that about Advance. And then Rupert, this is brilliant. Elon's doing it. But then he just goes quiet and then withdraws. And, like you said, I don't know what's happened in America. I'd like to know what's happening to America because, we like to kind of do the timeline and fix it all together to figure out what's really, really happening. Now, when going back to the hypocrisy of...
Oh, can I just make a comment? So, I mean, the reason, the thing that Rupert really didn't like, and of course I could have... I've made many suggestions and tried to get changes, etc., but nothing really happens. But, I made a comment about why Alistair Harrison and Liam Porter, who are effectively directors and administrators behind the scenes, went to America, and why Charlie Downs and Harrison Pitt or Lewis Brackpool didn't go to America, because those are the most senior politicians in the party. Why they didn't go? Because if I was leading a political trip to the States, I would take my best politicians with me, not my administrators and my legal people. And Rupert really didn't like it. I mean, really didn't like it.
Yeah, you need good orators, right?
Oh,
So
question is why? And my
Yeah.
question is because it was a sort of jolly, and there's, well, there was a jolly for them, and these are the two people that are the closest, who are effectively running the party. It isn't those young guys.
Yeah. I have to say, again, it's really weird because obviously being in the beast of the belly of the beast with Advance, everything's kind of replicated, because the same thing happened. We had two women who went to America to try and, influence people, but that didn't happen. It just didn't work out. And obviously Advance is no more. It completely folded, and they've gone across to GPAC, to Great British Pack, haven't they? So they're doing that. But then let's go back to Ben and the hypocrisy, and then obviously with Rupert now saying it out loud, and then now we're waiting for Farage to come back with what he thinks, and we will do that in a minute. But I know that Richard Donaldson, who is one of my friends, he was in Advance and then he went across to Restore, and I think he's also finding the same timeline, the same repetitive behaviours, but in two different. It's like going out with somebody who is abusive, and then it's like, why have I ended up with somebody else again who is abusive? It's the same kind of pattern. And I'm not saying that Restore are, and I'm not saying Advance, but what I'm trying to say is when you have that repetitive pattern in your life. So I just want to go to Richard Donaldson's video that he did earlier, and he kindly sent it to me to play, just to reflect on what he's saying about ego and about the hypocrisy.
And he also understands what it's like to be called out in front of millions of people and to just want the conversation to be done behind closed doors. So why did Rupert then decide to do the very same thing yesterday to Nigel Farage? Now, I understand that people will likely attack me in the comments now for putting this out, but I'm past caring, because I just want fucking honesty. This is all one big circus. Rupert Lowe is a successful businessman, and yesterday he posted a video with dramatic music in the background, shot from multiple angles, edited and spliced together, and kind of framed it as him essentially being the bigger person to ask for reform and Restore to work together. But as a successful businessman, he will know, or he should know at least, that you don't try to negotiate from a position of weakness, and if you are attempting to negotiate with a party that is vastly larger than your own, and you want to unite, you need to do it in a very polite way. What you shouldn't really do is do it publicly, knowing that the right wing will all start fighting each other, which they are now more than ever, particularly the prominent kind of right wing voices online. They're all at each other's throats on X, causing yet more division. And in my opinion, what you shouldn't do is lay out a list of demands publicly and expect the leader of a vastly bigger party to publicly bend the knee to you in front of millions of people, particularly when you have already said multiple times publicly that you believe Nigel has a huge ego. If you believe that Nigel has a huge ego, which, let's be honest, I think most of us know that he probably does, calling him out publicly in this way is possibly the worst thing you can do to someone like that, particularly if you want to work together. Rupert Lowe has Nigel's phone number. Nigel has Rupert's. Many people in the Restore and Reform camps have each other's phone numbers. I know this because I've been in the WhatsApp groups with many of them. Some amazing people on both sides. However, there is also a lot of ego. But here's the thing, ego has lost wars. Ego has destroyed countries. Ego is what is destroying our country. So today I simply say this, Rupert, Nigel, there is nothing more important right now than our country. I am fed up. We are all fed up of seeing politicians put ego and their own interests before the interests of the British people. I believe that if this were truly about trying to unite, finding common ground and working together, then this olive branch would have been extended properly behind the scenes at an actual meeting where they could have sat down over a beer or a brew and said their bit and learned to work together, to put differences to one side and actually get to work on saving our country. You are grown men. You are both very intelligent, far more intelligent than I am, and you both claim to want to fix our country. So with all due respect, sort your shit out. Now, Labour has just won in Manchester because 75% of the constituency didn't even bother to turn up. Restore and Reform had brilliant candidates, yet both of their votes combined wouldn't have beaten Labour. Perhaps if you gave people a bit of real hope through unity and working together, perhaps then those on the so-called right would actually get off their arses and believe that they can make a difference by putting that X in the box. There is no doubt that you are both very important men. We all know that. You have nothing more to prove. Either of you. But neither of you are more important than our country and the people that you are letting down. So please, whoever's in the right, whoever's in the wrong, we don't care. The truth is, both of you probably aren't saints. We don't care. We need to work together. We need to unite. We need to fix our country.
So what I've seen is that people are actually coming back with Rupert's slogan of, I don't care. I don't care. So now we're coming back at him and saying, we don't care. We want the right to unite. We cannot have a failed and incompetent right to save this country. And what we're doing is allowing the left to completely win. The Fabians, right? Their plan for this country and 2030 agenda and everything that they are trying to impose. I mean, and Andy Burnham is going to do this on steroids. He does not care. He is the king of the North, and he is moving everything, doing it as exactly how he wants it to be because he has an agenda. Now, we need to fight that. This is war. There is a huge war that is happening in our country, the demise of us, and I really, really want to look at Rupert Lowe's proposal, or the extension of his hand to Farage, and I want to go through it bit by bit, and I really want to get your opinion, Catherine, because I think it is invaluable what you think and what you've seen and what you've witnessed in regard to this. So I've actually broken it up into chunks and bite-sized chunks so we can talk about that. So I'm going to start with the first part.
Not only must mass deportations become a political possibility, mass deportations must become a political inevitability.
I mean, you listen to that, and I totally agree with every single word he says. You know, the way that he presents it, the music in the background, you know, it's kind of like luring you in, and you're sat there, and, you know, I mean, it resonates, doesn't it? Because we are completely overwhelmed at the moment with the influx of illegal immigrants coming in, invaders. You know, I was talking to the Nowhere photographer, and we were just saying we can't call them illegal immigrants anymore. They are invaders. Now, from what Rupert said in the very beginning to what he said now, how do you feel that that differs?
Sorry, in the beginning of what?
For in the very beginning, when his policies came out and he was stating what should happen, you know, sort of with the migrants, do you think there's any difference? Is he still standing?
I think it's basically the same. I
Yeah.
don't think my point about that offering is that he should have stopped there.
Right.
If he'd stopped there, then just at that point, like, that is what we fundamentally all agree on.
Yeah.
Most of us agree on. He should have stopped at that point, because the rest of it are minor peripherals. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We might like a death penalty. We've got people who want the death penalty, who want to just put it in immediately. There's people who don't want it. There's people who want a referendum, whatever. But it's a secondary order. Our country will not change radically whether we have the death penalty or we don't have the death penalty. Indeed, it won't change radically if we have ban halal and kosher or we don't ban halal and kosher. It probably would change more as radically if we just labeled it all and had labeling. But that is where he should have stopped, because that was an offering that was very easy for everybody to understand.
Yeah. And to be able to engage with that, and then to find that middle ground to say, okay, yeah, we're all in the same position. But then we go on to the next video, which is point 2. And I'm going to be honest, it's like token offers, isn't it? We're now looking at what feels like, and actually I said it earlier, and then I listened to Mike Graham, and he also said it kind of feels like a bit of a ransom. You know, let's go to point 2, and then we'll come back and talk about that.
Public Islamic prayer, Sharia courts, and any other barbaric foreign practices that have no place in our high trust society. Britain is a Christian country, and we must ensure it remains that way. If we cannot agree on that, then there is simply no way forward. The recommendations from our independent rape gang inquiry must be implemented in full. That includes the deportation of foreign national accomplices who were aware of these heinous crimes and yet failed to act. I know you have publicly disagreed, and that this was the is not so fortunate.
Wow. I mean, are these definitely his views, or has somebody written this for him?
Okay, well, there's so many things in that. The first one was, I don't know where he gets the 2063 from, because if we look at the demographic change, and we look at the death rates, we look at the birth rates, and we look at the number of white British children who are being born now, it's about 50%. So, I would be looking, if we carry on the current projections, it's going to be a lot sooner than 2063. It's going to be more like 20 years from now, will be sort of 2046 or something. So that's the first point. The second point I probably would make is the issue about the Fabians and Marxism, because the Fabians and Marxists have allowed, or particularly the Fabian ideas from Tony Blair onwards, have allowed the Islamification. The Islamification doesn't come without the state allowing it. The same with the grooming gangs.
Yeah.
So, and the other issue that I have, and I have discussed this at length with Restore, is the issue of what he's calling foreign, because most of these grooming gang men have got British passports, and many of them indeed are born in Britain. So this is what the issue really has been. It's like, are you talking about people with dual nationality, and how are you going to get Pakistan to take them back and all this sort of thing, but actually defining, because the number of people who are foreign, we've got a big new influx, but we're not talking about these old cases in Pakistan, in Bradford in cases. These are people who second generation have been there since 1950. And many born here. So Nigel, of course, has been very, very reluctant to have this, to talk about deporting people with British passports. This is the real, or removing their citizenship. So, these are some of the issues. Do I think Rupert? I think he's gone harder. I mean, this is much harder than earlier things that he did with some of the. You remember he did with the Brett Weinstein. He was talking about, multiculturalism, etc. So yes, this is a harder to the base hardness, I think, and so it feels to me like he's talking to Restore members and voters, not to Nigel at this point. But I would have left it on the very first point and seen if you got agreement there at that point, because really going on to these other issues. So he goes, obviously, I think you're going to show further clips. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, we're going to do the clips. We're going to go through to the 5 points, because I think it's really important just to kind of see what he says. And I actually agree with you. If we'd have just done that first part and everybody agrees on that, then actually I think we may have gotten somewhere, and it wouldn't have felt so much like a ransom. Like, this is what you got to do on my terms, and this is how we do it. Because you don't do it that way, really. You kind of negotiate. But to be fair, they like Richard Donaldson said, you have each other's numbers. Do it behind the scenes and discuss it, and don't put everybody's hopes up. Don't start stirring and creating sort of like this theatrical responses from all of us, because we're like, oh my God, this is going to happen. Do it and then come out. But it hasn't happened like that.
Quite uncontroversial. I don't think that particularly Nigel would have a problem on a death penalty referendum. I really can't see that as being some sort of issue. But getting rid of Generic and Braverman, even though I don't like the fact that they're there, I can see that that's just totally an irrelevance at this point.
Of course it is.
When you're starting to talk about getting rid of the Conservatives, then we end up with Raheem Kassam saying, well, we'll get rid of Alistair and Liam, right? And various other people. And we're not talking about getting rid of people. We're talking about combining people. And of course, the other thing that is just forgotten in all of this is, where are the bloody Conservatives?
Yeah.
I mean, the issue is they've got 20% of the vote in some places and considerably more in other places. And the whole answer really is that the demographics of the three parties are not equal. They really are not the same. So Conservatives are much more rural than Restore is. Restore is more young, male, and more what I would call semi-urban.
Yeah.
On the edges of Manchester, on the edges of Birmingham, where the sort of the demographic wave is moving, not into the Conservative heartlands. And
Yeah.
Reform is much older, and is Essex based, and etc. So these, if you were going, in my opinion, if you were going to do a serious idea of uniting the right, you would get Kemi involved as well. You can't miss her out. She's these movements between these people who, you look at by-elections in local elections, you get these extraordinary results where, like, look at Aberdeen South, which was going on well Makerfield, and the Conservatives got over 50% of the vote. Like, how? Goodness.
Exactly.
You say, you look at some of the by-elections come in, and you look, and that's the other thing I had a real problem with Restore. It's like no election analysis whatsoever. I mean, zero. So, you'll see a by-election one week which has got 50%, 60%, like in South Holland last week for the Conservatives, and then you'll see Reform with 55%.
I think the projections, I hear you, and I think the projections, everybody was just kind of like, yeah, we're going to be right up here, and this is how it's going to happen. So then there was this kind of jolly kind of atmosphere, this kind of solidarity of, right, we're going to move forward, and this is what we're going to get. And then I remember like watching Dan Wootton live and just kind of going, yep, yeah, I actually haven't got what you said you were going to get. So there's that real deflated disappointment of, oh my God, we haven't reached what we needed to reach. And, like you said, they can't have been projecting properly if they weren't actually looking at it properly.
Well, you can argue that, they've done well as a new party, or you can argue that they did badly. Given that the crisis, what people feel is the demographic crisis, is so acute now, then it's an open door. Like, the door is just there to be pushed. Everybody got deluded into this this idea in Makerfield. I think that was really quite a shock for people.
Yeah, it was. I think for me, it was a bit of a wake-up call for everybody. It was like, actually, there's work to do. And, they thought that they were skating. They were like fast and furious, and they were above everybody else. And then it was like, okay, we need to sit back down again and rethink. My friend here, lovely Kenny, has said, I just want a leader who uses the power that we give him for once to put the UK first. We are leaving UK kids a future of mistrust, betrayal, fear, a future they have no say in, and it's up to us to fight for them. And that's how we're feeling. That's what we want. And this is why we are so irked about the way that the leaders of the right are fighting. It's like, get a grip and let's look up our children and our grandchildren and our grandchildren's children. We have to stand up to enforce some change now, because otherwise Burnham is going to be going in again, and we cannot have that, because it's just going to be the complete demise of us. Let's just go to the next point, which is number 3. Am I on point number 3 now?
Third,
Yeah.
favour.
There we go. What do you think about that?
Well, it did strike me that this sounded like a party political broadcast through it.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that.
Got the feeling of that it wasn't, so much about reform, but this is a party political broadcast on behalf of restore. And you know that they did say, always restore Britain, not reform Britain, because they are actually pretty similar-ish words, really.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I'm surprised Nigel. Sorry, I'm surprised Nigel. I didn't know Nigel had opposed it. I'm surprised actually, but uncontroversial. I think. Don't think that's a problem. Shouldn't be a problem, but that's minor again.
Yeah. I'm just looking at this. Apparently, Nigel's responded to Rupert's 5 caveats and not heard them yet. I think we've got a response, but I don't know if we've got the full response. Let's go to point number 4.
Popular decisions are now required, not short-term politicking, but long-term, hard planning that will ensure we leave a better Britain to our grandchildren than the one that was handed to us.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a comment here. The party that can give the working classes good jobs and roofs will be the most important to me. The big brands need a shake-up here. They need to employ more working class people and share the wealth. I mean, controlling spending welfare costs, Britain needs to be self-sufficient. Is that possible?
Is
it?
I think it's pie in the sky, to be honest, because we have the most enormous pensions crisis that is all we can't get rid of. That's legally the public sector pensions crisis, the government debt are just of enormous proportions. So, in one of the ironies is that we actually probably need to inflate our way out of it, not control inflation, because controlling inflation will make it worse. And also, cutting everything, cutting expenditure, you will end up with riots and whatever. So my issue is to not, obviously, like there's the green energy, I would get rid of that and I would start, pumping oil and, trying to help farmers.
Drill, baby, drill.
Yeah. 50% of our food or something. It's going to be very difficult to ramp that up. And I would not allow land to be bought by foreign nationals. I would have had rather a more nationalistic idea about that policy and speaking about it, like stop farmland being bought by foreign nationals. Even stop houses being bought by foreign nationals, anything with land. But these things are extraordinarily difficult, and that sounded like a sort of a right-wing Thatcherite cut, which is going to be extraordinarily difficult. So I think if you've already got riots and major problems trying to deport people, I'd leave it at that at the moment. That's my view, is like, don't burn on top of it. By cutting everybody's pensions and welfare at exactly the same time. And of course you will collapse the economy as you do that.
Course.
So I would have again left that and maybe spoke about who owns land, who owns our companies. But I have tried on a number of occasions to talk about policies that are in Asia in terms of who's allowed to have passports, about dual wage system for non-citizens and citizens, as we used to have, for example, with au pairs, and nobody's interested in talking about them or really thinking about them.
Yeah.
And I think there's so again, I would have just left this stuff because we're in a cultural crisis as well as the
course.
economic one, but the cultural one is the one that is, and of course the other issue is this issue about cutting pensions and cutting triple lock, which is Nigel's voting lot
Yeah.
voters
Yeah.
versus the Zoomers
Yeah.
who are thinking something completely different.
Of course. And then don't forget we've got Paul Burgess, who is or was supporting Rupert and advising around the net zero madness. And, he's an absolutely brilliant guy to have on side. He was advising Advance and he wasn't appreciated. And in fact, that went very, very badly. He was supporting Wales and he is a phenomenal guy with so much knowledge. And to have him on your advisory board is you've just, got the ace card. You have literally trumped right there. And I know that there's probably been some frustration there too. And it's kind of who is leading the way. Are we allowed advisors, or is it just Alistair and Rupert saying exactly what happens? What's the point of having advisors if you're not going to listen to them?
I spoke to Paul Burgess over the Advance time, but I've no idea he was even involved really in Restore.
Yeah, he's just helping in the background, and he's, again, just a phenomenal guy just to kind of be able to help. And brilliant guy. But let's now go. Sorry.
Yeah, going back to this political stuff, I would have, are you talking to Restore voters? Are you talking to Nigel? Because who is that for?
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to point number 5 and let's just finish that off, and then we'll come to you and what's been happening with you.
Fifth, is simply not an option. The British people deserve nothing
I look at that and I had to question, where has this come from? Why now? Why now? And then we look at the 2 by-elections that didn't go to plan. Is that why? Or is there something else going on behind the scenes that we don't know?
I don't know. They see Nigel as weak now, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's extraordinary. And I think it's going to be quite demotivating for branches, knowing that they might now, but they won't be parliamentary candidates, and they now might get shoved with reform.
Yeah.
I can't see how that is particularly motivating.
I mean, look, his speech is motivating.
Yeah.
And I love listening to him. He speaks and commands authority. When he talks, I listen. And I like to hear what he has to say. But then I have to look at the members. I have to imagine that I was a member and I'd be like, hang on a minute. Where's this come from? I haven't even been told this is happening. As in a collective, we haven't been informed. And then that means, like you said, with the branches, what's going to happen? We're going to merge with Restore. How does this look? And I would feel a little bit pissed off, to be honest. I'd be like, we've just seen this with Advance. We've just seen all of this happen. And now this is happening over here. Now, but I also appreciate that the right has to unite. But there is a lot of hatred for Farage. And the Restore members are avidly behind Rupert, and they are avidly opposed to Nigel. And so when you are in that sort of situation, I look at Rupert and I just think, have you not thought this through? I don't really understand this. So can you shed any light?
No. I just am shell-shocked as well. Absolutely stunned by it.
It's mad. I mean, let's look at Nigel's response and see what he said to this.
On the Rupert Lowe stuff, well, my understanding is that he had a bit of a fallout last week with the Conservatives, who, he had been working quite closely with for some time. He said that he had a deal with the Conservatives, and Kemi Badenoch said they had an arrangement. I don't know what that was. My understanding is there was a bit of a fallout. Now, look, I mean, if you want to do a political deal with somebody, you would contact them privately and not do a 12-minute video. That said, I did actually reach out back yesterday to him. I did say, look, should we have a call? I haven't heard back yet, so I don't know what the sincerity of this is. But it seemed to me that he was sort of, more than anything, perhaps putting out this gesture, saying, look, I'm the good guy, Nigel's the bad guy. Well, that's not the case. If you look at my history, in politics over the last few years, I am prepared to do things and make sacrifices if I believe it's in the national interest. I certainly did that in 2019, and I would do whatever I could for us to have a sane centre-right alliance that beat Labour at the next general election. But I don't ditch my friends, I don't ditch my allies, whether that's Suella Braverman or Posh George. I do not ditch people because somebody else wants me to. And there's an irony in this, which is that 2 years ago, Rupert Lowe said what a fantastic job Jenrick, Braverman and Kruger were doing inside the Conservative Party. And, unlike Chris Philp, who failed completely, but now wants us all to forget it, in the case of Braverman and Jenrick, they resigned from their positions in their frustration that the government wouldn't get a grip. So that would not be a part of a negotiation. In broader terms, look, you could see a situation where Restore, without the hope of winning anything outside Great Yarmouth, I mean literally without a hope of winning a single seat in the country, could do us great harm. And I think online you will see a lot of Restore potential voters now beginning to worry about the impact that might have. So look, I'll finalise that by saying if it was the offer of a deal, it came in a very unusual way. I have responded to it potentially, with an open mind, as I would, but I'm certainly not going to be ditching people that I view to be allies and a great asset.
So he even recognises that it's kind of like holding him hostage. There are conditions. If you and I join, you have to do this. You have to remove that person. You have to do this. And it's just a bit like, yeah, that's kind of not like meeting in the middle. You're kind of telling me what to do and you're sort of railroading me. And what I find interesting is that Rupert then put up a post earlier and he screenshot part of his conversation with Farage and it just says, we'll call you later. That's it. So he's then saying, look, I'm not going to call him a liar, but basically he's lying. You know, he didn't have this conversation with me. And, you know, I'm looking at this now and I still agree that my 5 points, you know, need to stand. However, the offer remains open to Nigel and reform. Although outright lying about our private conversation does not help that. For Restore Britain, it will always be country before party. And then he goes on to say, you know, back Restore Britain and let's ensure that these 5 guiding principles have the best possible chance of being implemented for the British people. So, again, everything is being made public and it just feels like I'm in a playground with idiots just fighting publicly and you're just like going, this is a bit embarrassing. I need to walk away from this now. Where are you at with this?
Yeah, I think that's correct. I mean, you would have to say that Nigel speaks very well unscripted. I mean, that was really, it shows him probably at his best in that respect. I go back to the original point that Rupert should have just done the very first point,
yeah,
and left it there.
I agree.
Stuff about getting rid of personnel because anything like that, just leave it at that. So,
I mean, what do you think of Tice?
I think Tice is a Tory, effectively, and I don't think Tice is very charismatic. And he couldn't. If Nigel leaves, I think reform will collapse because I don't think that there is. People won't vote for Zia and they won't vote for Tice, and I don't think they're going to vote for Generic. Excuse me. I don't think they're going to vote for Generic. So I think that, you know, that the scenario will change again if Nigel did decide to go.
Let me just put Tice on so you can have a quick drink because I don't want you choking. Let me get Tice up.
We welcome competition. We welcome the opportunity to convince other people. That's all a good thing. And we also trust the gut instinct of the good British voters in different constituencies to say, what's my objective here? Well, last time their objective was to get rid of the Tories and they voted accordingly. This time around, it'll be to get rid of open borders, Burnham, at the next general election, and they'll vote accordingly. And we believe the only way to do that is to vote reform.
So it's thanks but no thanks, in other words.
Well, I mean, you know, we can always thank people, and at the end of the day, you can talk to lots of people, but actually, what we want is action. Someone who's going to deliver it, and I think people can see with our policy announcement today, it's only reform that has got the infrastructure, that's raising the money, that's got 2,500 councillors already on the right, that is capable of forming a government that's going to get us out of this mess in so many different ways.
Thank you to Mike Graham for allowing me to clip that. He gave me full permission. So I have used that because I just thought it was quite tongue-in-cheek and he was quite cheeky there. It was, well, we can thank them, you know. But, the thing is, he's got a point. You know, they are established. They are more established than Restore. So they're ahead of the game in that sense.
Yeah, but it was all, I can't stand the way Tice talks. I mean, he spent 3 minutes saying nothing about the good voters and whatever. I would have liked to, and their policy, I believe today, the one about France, was a complete and utter disaster in terms of what that just said. So I would have liked to have heard a lot more about policy, you know, and less about fluff about the good, great British voters who, I just don't like the way Tice talks at all. I just thought that was pointless, meaningless.
But a lot of people do like him, and a lot of people do find him, you know, sort of not necessarily charismatic, but there's this kind of like cheek to him, and you know, he's quite amenable. I quite like listening to him as well. You know, he's not as impacting as Rupert, you know, I will give you that. But, you know, ultimately, we all have people that we can listen to and can hear, you know, what they're trying to say. But I hear also what you're saying. I've actually had a look. Go on, sorry.
You know, he didn't address the issues that Rupert had raised in terms of nor did Nigel. I mean, they don't raise the issues of the policies and how their policies are similar or different from Restore's. All those conversations were not about policies.
Yeah. But I think this is about, you know, sort of Rupert's call out and just saying, look, where are we at? So when you have a proposal of some description, you're not going to sort of go into the heart of it straight away. You're going to have to sit there and process it. So we're there right now in that processing stage of, is this the right thing to do? Is this the not right thing to do? And also, are we going to look like dicks if we actually aren't honouring what's being said, or, you know, sort of responding to the requests? So they're going to have to quickly have a conflab, discuss where we're going next and how do we, you know, sort of respond publicly, because like he said, it was a very almost awkward 12 minutes of listening to what he's kind of put out there. And I think, like you said, it's come as a shock to all of us. I have had a look at some go on.
What Nigel said about the Conservatives was interesting, because I've suspected that as well, and that caused great consternation as far as I'm aware. Again, there are true stories from different sources, as there are what happened with the America trip, but there is one source that says that there was a conversation with Kemi Badenoch about Clacton.
Yeah.
And I think that would quite horrify lots of Restore voters who would, even if they don't like Nigel, they like the Conservatives even less. They're sort of Conservative Reform Restore. It's not Restore jump over to Conservatives.
Absolutely not. Nope. Yeah, the horror, I can imagine it. Just like hot sweats and oh my God. But I mean, I looked at some tweets just to kind of get a little bit of an idea of what people thought. And we have Willie Taylor, who said, we don't want them. Most of them are completely detached from reality, thinking Restore will win the next general election. They recently polled as low as 1%. Let them rot in Restore whilst reform keeps moving forward. And obviously has put up the Westminster voting intention. So if you have a look at that, you know, you can see what he's saying there about the 1%, but then other people are fighting and saying that's not true, that's not accurate. So, you know, everybody debates and everybody fights between themselves. But then we went on to another lady, a tweet that she put up. And it's Alice S. So my opinion on Reform and Restore working together. They don't need to form a single party and shouldn't. Choice is good. An electoral pact or alliance where they agree not to run candidates against each other in key areas would be sufficient. So always post-election legislative cooperation would be welcome. So, I mean, there's like some fair comments and there are some other people kind of fighting it. Now, there's a guy that I know also from Restore, and he has said it's an offer of cooperation, not a merger. Now, I don't know how I feel in regards to what was proposed, because is it a merger? Are they asking to completely collaborate, or is it just an offer of cooperation? Do you know where we stand?
No, it's completely unclear.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm there with that. I feel that too. So let me just have a quick look. Give me 2 seconds. I really want to now get to the nitty gritty about you. You have obviously walked out. You've left. You've said enough is enough. And I want to know what drove you to that point.
Well, I think it was so many things, but there were obviously a couple of crux points. One particularly was how the Cromwell Club, which is the people who paid £2,500, were treated, how the offers of help, especially with AI and IT, were treated. the engagement with the press. Again, I have some relationships with press, and I have people asking me to do things. And during Makerfield, there was very much the attitude of the Gerald Batten attitude, which is all mainstream media are awful and we want nothing to do with anybody, even when there were people who were proposing to do friendly articles that they had done on other right-wing figures in the States. So there was all this sort of stuff happening. But in particular, there were a couple of things that, the response to a number of people, including, for example, Richard, a guy called Miles, who had lots and lots of money. The response to many people who'd given suggestions for any sort of criticism, especially of Alistair, was you're either with us or you can just F off, basically.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Okay.
That was with Miles. He actually asked for his money back and got it twice. But there was this sort of general thing that, there was an untouchable person. So that was that. But it was just the sort of structural stuff of the organization where you had so many offers of serious money with serious people that were just not taken up at all.
So you said that Ben Habib offered seven-figure amount.
Well,
Is that right?
What I've heard that was done, but I'm not talking about even Ben Habib. I'm talking about people who were had IT companies or specialists. So I think that was the issue. But also, obviously, there were a couple of very specific things. So a year ago, or about, just around June, July, Rupert was sort of really pushing me to work on the halal. And I've raised like 45,000, and it was really, and I had no idea when I started that what a muddle halal is, and the extent of it, and the issues with hidden halal and non-stunned and stunned halal, and imports and exports and all the rest of it. Even definitions of, what halal is, whether it's religious slaughter, etc. All the conversations with supermarkets, and this project just sort of grew and became really extensive. And I'm still in the process of doing thousands of FOIs. I'm trying to build a database of all schools. I've done all the hospitals, and I'm trying to build a database of every school in the country, of which there is massive variation.
Yeah.
Not related to whether there's lots of Muslims there. I mean, you can have schools in Essex, which you've got one Muslim child out of 300 that serve halal without telling the parents. And then you can have others, so there's no consistency. But I just did an awful lot of work on it. And there's something sort of really odd about it, because they don't really want to cooperate with people who are doing independent projects or working with other people on things.
But yet Rupert pushed you to do it. He was encouraging you to go forward with this.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden kind of backed off, or?
Well, Connor Tomlinson has said that he has had his report on halal sort of put hidden on the back burner or whatever. But effectively, I released the website, and which was, the result of a lot of work, which I haven't taken a penny for it. I do it all, I've spent hundreds of hours on it. And
so just quickly saying, it's www.thescreamsoftheLambs.co.uk.
Correct.
Yeah. And this is like the first kind of page, isn't it?
Well, that's the mobile page. It looks a little bit different if you have it on a computer. It looks better than that on a computer.
Oh, really?
That's the mobile version.
So the truth about halal meat in Britain. So it's quite an in-depth website where it shows a lot of things.
Yeah, loads of research. So anyway, and so I said to, Rupert, I've released this website, and he said, "Oh, fine, go to, would you promote it?" And he just go to Alistair, and of course my heart sank because Alistair is just like a black hole, and so I phoned out Alistair and I said, "I'm on the other line," and that's the end of that. So,
Right.
so it's just like, why do you do that when you actually wanted? You were part of the process. Obviously, this aim of this exercise, and I've raised about 45,000, 40,000, 40 something, is and as a GoFundMe, is to produce a judicial review on the illegality of it and to force labeling, etc. Yeah, we can't ban it because we know that we can't ban it at the moment because it's like 1 out of 650 votes. But the idea is, and I am also, for example, doing a lawsuit at the moment, or going to be doing a lawsuit with Kensington Palace and Prince Charles about them serving hidden halal at their afternoon tea.
King Charles. Yeah.
Sorry, King Charles. And then, we've got train companies selling at supermarkets.
My God.
Yes.
Train companies. I mean, tell me the most shocking, sort of.
Is Kensington Palace, but literally I picked a sandwich up. I don't, go on trains that much or buy chicken sandwiches that much, but I picked it up and it was not marked. Obviously, this is on Great Western Railways. And then I was, like going all the way to Plymouth from London, was bored. So sort of look at the packet, look at the ingredients, and it's got all the normal stuff about calories and, mayonnaise, and nuts and stuff. And then it had a QR code. And so I don't know what possessed me to look at the QR code. And then I went onto the QR code. You go. So you're not finding it's halal when you buy it. You're not finding it on the packaging.
Yep.
It's every other sort of thing about how much fat and whatever it's got. And then finally you go on the QR code and you find it's halal.
But we have a right to know. We literally have this right to know because
not be sold this stuff, basically.
Absolutely.
The law says that it's for Muslims to be killed by Muslims for their consumption only, not for everybody on a train.
So why has this happened? Why has it happened that everybody is now consuming it? Who has decided this?
The government, Labour government. It was actually the John Major's government before Blair pushed how slaughterhouses were regulated away from local authorities to the Food Standard Agency, which presumably the Food Standard Agency, like so many other institutions in Britain, is one Fabian mess. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so they basically stopped regulating it.
That's insane.
Literally. So they basically have said that I've got a letter, once they have given a license to a slaughterhouse, they don't care whether it's halal or not.
Yeah.
They don't.
And I think
either.
We have a right to know. And I say that because, I became a vegetarian because I actually started to look at the government guidelines as to how the meat could be served or delivered and packaged, whether they've had tumours and how many rats are allowed to climb over them. And there's certain sort of guidelines. And I actually at that point thought, I can't do this. I don't know what is going into my body and the amount of injections and the amount of additives that they have. Even the Bovaer recently, like what was that about? The cows were hemorrhaging, but it's all this new fad of let's give them Bovaer, and then, it's distressing really how the government are messing with our lives, our health and our animals, and again, with the halal, the screams of the lambs, what does your website show us?
Well, it shows us it's very extensive. It's all the New Zealand lamb effectively is halal. It's hidden in many, almost all Indian takeaways will be halal, which are Pakistani or Bangladeshi takeaways in Britain. It's widespread in schools. And again, there are varying versions of what happens, and the same with hospitals. Completely hidden, stunned halal hidden, unstunned not hidden in Pakistani schools in Bradford. Some labeling, some with choice, some with nothing. It's just a complete free for all on it. So you can get multiple results in the same town, even though the demographics of that town are very similar. But yes, it's extensive. My concern is the politicization. I mean, is the religious and philosophical things, because of course it affects other religions like Sikhs, who are up in arms about it because it's absolutely against their religion, traditional Christians, because this is a sacrifice to Allah. And if you want to talk about, Islamification, this is a way that it
runs deep.
So there's the animal cruelty issue. Obviously, there's the philosophical issue, and then there's the religious issue and the political,
the spiritual.
issue.
Yeah, it's horrendous. I mean, I saw some yesterday. I just posted because I went into a shop and I just saw some marshmallows and it just said halal friendly, and it was just like, oh, F off.
Yeah, well, I have actually obviously put other sort of halal. So the other thing about halal is that we have all these certification. We have 20 certification boards. They're all private companies. They all make a fortune, and they charge many other companies. So, for example, Ben & Jerry's is paying, Kellogg's is paying. You can see, and it's nothing. These have got nothing to do with meat. I mean, India is having this great big argument as well, because obviously you've got quite strong Hindu nationalists, but they have halal water in India.
Yeah, that's insane.
It gets completely mad, this thing,
But this can't be enough for you to leave Restore because you didn't feel supported. Some people will say, are you throwing the toys out the pram? Some people will say that you're just whining and moaning, and some people have come and said that to me, and I've said, no, she has a right, and there's got to be more to it than just this.
Well, it's really the fact that I didn't see the management of this and structural stuff of this in the same way as you saw it in advance.
Yeah.
I just thought, like, I'm banging my head against a brick wall here. It's just a waste of my time. I'm better to go off and spend all my time working on halal or, Turkish barbers, whatever. There's plenty of things to do. It's not like I'm short of political projects. So I've got plenty of things to do that I can, but when you just feel like they want to do the halal and then they're completely disinterested in a website is the biggest resource on halal that there is in the entire country. You think, what's happening here?
Yeah.
And that, literally, in my opinion, is whether your face fits with Alistair or not. That's it.
Right.
Only one criteria. It's nothing to do with whether you're. I mean, you see, Henry Bolton was, and we're very similar in some ways. Henry Bolton and I, he's sort of in the same age, and we've been around in parties and been involved in parties. But Henry Bolton knew Alistair in this picture when when he's leader of UKIP, so he knew them all, and so he's one of the mates.
Yeah.
And
that's why his face fits.
Particular problem with Henry Bolton, but it's just like, well, he was picked because he knows them from that period. So I think there was just this stuff that was this really weird, and then the way they just superimpose these regional organisers with just literally young guys. And there were so many other people who have are just fed up with things that I thought, and there was just no attempt to fix anything. That is what the problem I've got, is not if you're a sort of structure and you're growing. I mean, there's no diagram of how this organised. Go back to Ben's point about how this thing actually works.
Yeah. So it still stands. That still stands from a few months ago when Ben said this.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. I mean, there's nobody actually employed by Restore. They all work in their bedrooms and are self-employed. There's no sort of structural plan as to who's on boards or who's does this or that. You just sort of know varying people.
So Reform has got the structure and Restore has got the policies. Now, I also know that you and James Harvey and Sydney were venturing into something that, Restore wanted you to do. What happened there?
No. Restore didn't want us to do it. I did it. So I was interested in cigarette gangs right back in when I stood in Great Yarmouth, right back in sort of 2019 and before that, 2018, 2017. I was aware that there was a big problem with Kurdish gangs. There were Albanian gangs. I live quite near Great Yarmouth, although not in it. There were Albanian drug gangs, there were Kurdish cigarette gangs, and I did quite a lot of research at that time. I wrote an article for the Salisbury Review about this growing issue. And this growing issue with cigarette gangs was made into a catastrophe by the Conservatives. It's a perfect example of the Labour curve, where the more you put up tax, the less revenue you get. So the number of smokers during their era did not change, and yet they put up tax 4 times, 5 times, and Labour put up tax. They've driven cigarettes and even more tobacco. I mean, tobacco is like £45 a pouch or something now.
It's ridiculous.
And so they kept driving up tax, and they kept on getting less revenue, and people didn't change, and they ended up selling only half the cigarettes. And of course this had gone into the gangs, and the gangs had done some terrible things. I mean, right back when I was there, they had cut off somebody's ear in Great Yarmouth, and the local paper had reported it as an assault. They had firebombed some buildings. There was a building fire in Leicester where there was a big explosion, and I identified at that point that was related to Kurdish cigarette gangs in Great Yarmouth, because one of the girls who died was an East European, and they often front behind East European looking shops, and she was the girlfriend of one of the linchpins in Great Yarmouth. So I've been aware of this issue, and I knew. So I basically came up with the idea that I would like to explore this issue. And so I said to a few people, after Makerfield, I'm going to go and do some undercover reporting on it. And I didn't really even know, I'm not a smoker, so I didn't know where I was going to go or how easy. And in fact, a volunteer, a friend of a Cromwell Club member, came all the way down from Pembrokeshire. He's a young guy.
Oh, wow.
All the way across from Pembrokeshire, and I had another volunteer who came out the first day, and the 3 of us went out in my car, and we basically found it was really easy to buy these cigarettes, and we bought a number. We were recording on phones at that point, but we got 20 packets of cigarettes and stuff, and then so I spoke to James Harvey of Vox Populi, and he said, I'll come out with you, with Sydney, and we'll do some more. So one of the volunteers and Sydney and myself, we went out, and it was terrible weather, and we were out for another whole day. And it's not particularly nice doing this stuff, yeah? I mean, you're dealing with people who are pretty violent, effectively, and will protect their turf. And we've seen situations where trading standards woman who was frightened for her life almost with cigarettes at this issue. And so I did that. And then I said to Restore, I've done all this and I've got all this data. And so Restore in Great Yarmouth basically wrote to the police and said, under Restore. And so the police called me, and it was a very odd conversation, because they said, well, do you work for Restore? Because there's nothing about you. Who are you? I said, no, I don't work for Restore. I've done this myself. So they came over and they picked up all the cigarettes. And I spent about, it's not about money, but 4 people gave their time, and I spent the whole day downloading this stuff, onto like dozens of files onto the police website. And I spent about £300 on it. And then Alistair Harrison started tweeting out about what a great job Restore had been doing in Great Yarmouth, and never mentioned that it actually wasn't Restore, it was myself and volunteers and Vox. And of course, Vox couldn't use any of their film because it all became police evidence.
Right.
Anyway, it was sort of irking, you know. It was just like, why are you doing that? Why
Yeah.
are you doing that? Because you know where all this stuff came from and who did it.
Yeah. So
And
there's two things.
Yeah.
There's two things that have really kind of gotten to you. Obviously, the management part of it, and then you know, in regards to this and sort of them taking the credit, and you know, the halal
weren't interested in it. Just weren't interested.
But I mean, some would say, is that a them problem or a you problem? You know, that
makes no difference. I'm a volunteer, and that's the point. I don't get paid. I don't have to do it. I'm not going to be an MP. So they've done this. The issue I'd say is that they don't treat volunteers very well. They did the same thing in Makerfield with people who'd been canvassing for 20 days, and they were sitting outside at 5:30 and nobody came to debrief them. The people who'd been there for 20 days didn't even get bought a drink. I wasn't there, but I get, you know, the feedback. So the issue is when you're dealing with volunteers, they don't have to do it. It's as simple as that. I'm a volunteer. All I need is to be thanked. That's it. Don't need anything else.
So you just think a little bit of gratitude goes a long way. But
well,
I mean,
like on the halal, where it's a policy that they want to be involved in. They're very actively involved in it.
But to leave is quite a dramatic thing, isn't it? You know, you have just said, I'm done.
No, it wasn't actually. I mean, I left as a branch chair, and I didn't, unlike Richard, I didn't say anything. I just literally left as a branch chair and was going to carry on just being a member because I didn't want to be a branch chair. I wanted to be involved in investigations. But it was after the America trip when Rupert was so aggressive about it.
When you say aggressive, what do you mean?
Well, unpleasant, rude, nasty.
No, I understand, but I mean, how? How was he unpleasant? How was he
rude?
He
told me once to start my own party.
Okay.
So it's like, okay. You know, well, like, for example, when I talked to him about Saskia, that was the first time when, you know of Saskia in this story. You know, he just basically said, you know, just shut up, leave it alone, nothing to do with you. There's no discussion about what happened to Saskia.
Yeah.
You know, it's always like and so I had and then when there was I just was getting fed up with it and
is this where the misogyny kicks in? Is this what you felt that there was kind of like this talking down to you because you're a woman, or is it just a personality thing?
Well, when you haven't even spoken to somebody like Alistair, who's never said more than one word to you, it's difficult to have had an argument with somebody, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, it's not like I had arguments with Alistair and he didn't like it. It just doesn't, it just blanks people.
Right.
And so anyway, but the thing is that, you know, I've got other things I want to do. And I didn't feel, that's why this is so interesting. I didn't feel that with the current structure that Restore would get anywhere. That these results would carrying on like that, as Nigel said. They can make terrible disruption to reform, but not actually win anything themselves. And so if you're going to put a lot of effort into something, it's got to be something that you actually think has a strategy and is going to win.
Yeah. What advice would you give to Rupert?
The advice would depend on whether you are serious about joining forces with Nigel or whether this is just all a big play.
Okay, let's say he's serious. What would you say to him? What is your bit of advice that you'd give to Rupert?
Well, obviously, he's got to get on the phone and he's got to be conciliatory towards each other if he wants Nigel to be conciliatory back. I mean, they've just got to. Yeah. And I think that if he doesn't, even if they are only cooperating, I think that they need to majorly change the management structure. Not that Alistair needs to disappear, but that he needs to be a piece of it, not effectively, you know, Alistair Campbell is what he's his role as. In fact, bigger than that. He's just running everything. There's no board, there's no committees, there's no structure. So yeah, I think that he and I think if you are an insurgency party, you should listen and you should take every single person possible, everybody, and you should reach out to you and Richard. Why not? Reach out to everybody, not just basically blank this person or this person or this person.
Yeah. No, I hear you. So in regards to your website, so the screamsoftheLambs.co.uk, can anybody help you? Can anybody support you? What can people do to come alongside? Do you need any volunteers? What is it that you need to actually embark on following the pursuit of the Screams of the Lambs?
Well, at the moment, I think I'm basically okay. You can always message me with instances of data that in schools. We've done a lot of the research, and I've had volunteers in supermarkets and things, and I'm still ongoing with the FOIs, so that's just ongoing. But if there's particular schools, particular restaurants that you see that are selling it, the data is always really useful.
Yeah, like Subway. I was mortified. I just walked in because my son wanted something and I was like, I hate takeaway and fast food anyway. I like to do it from home. But sometimes when needs must, you do.
Was that halal? Where did it show it was halal?
Yeah. There's in Subway shows halal and Domino's. I think I've seen it in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite frightening. So, okay, what we need to do then is we need to share this and we need people to know of this site, and anybody that can find information for you, how can they get hold of you?
Yeah, the best way is just to message me on Twitter, yeah?
On X, yeah?
Yeah, on X, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Some people don't like inbox messages. I get some really weird inbox messages, let me tell you. So I have to block a lot of people. So you're happy for people to message you and tell you of, Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, listen, it has been absolutely lovely to have you on, and Paul Thorpe is on. Very interesting to hear Catherine's comments this evening. There's been a massive U-turn since our last message exchange. So
yeah, I'm a believer, and I absolutely just I think it's sort of like religious conversion. I mean, I believed that they actually could win something, and I still have a belief that if you got 100 Elon Musk type people who were the absolute cream of the country, with massive resources and massive IT, and you could do something really unbelievable. But instead, and I've been critical of Restore, of their candidates. I thought, Rebecca, when I complained about Rebecca Shepherd and I didn't complain about her personally. I have nothing against her personally. I don't know her, she's just and I think actually, to be honest, I feel really bad for Rebecca Shepherd. I mean, the way that the whole thing worked was terrible, especially when, you had, did you see the exchange? This was a really interesting exchange, the exchange which happened on film with Rupert, Alistair, Rebecca Shepherd. So two guys are deciding what Rebecca could say anyway, without her having any input into it, even though she's the candidate. And then Rupert saying to Alistair, Rupert saying to Alistair, can she answer a question?
I know, it did seem a bit contrived and a bit controlling, and I remember sitting going, why isn't she not speaking? Why is she not actually standing up for her, for her constituency? She needs to be speaking, and she didn't. And I think it's really important that when you have somebody there representing, you need to engage and you need to hear their voice. But for them to, or for her to be not silenced, but to not be able to speak, and then you have to go through the appropriate measures, it does feel a little bit claustrophobic, actually.
Why did they stand there? Why did they choose that candidate? Everything is always done in a great big rush. The same with the Norfolk police. Well, I started making comments about the Norfolk police because Vox had to pull an interview. It was so terrible.
Yeah.
Because again, where did they get this guy from? He's like was a Tory with shiny shoes. I'm sorry, but he looked like a Tory boy. And he spoke like a Tory boy, and he knew nothing about policing. He didn't know what the clear-up rate in the shoplifting is. He thought that two-tier policing didn't exist in Norfolk.
Oh, my dear Lord.
This sort of crap. And like somebody said, well, what are their DE? Oh, I don't know. I'll have to look it up. Oh, I don't know. I'll have to look it up. It's like, well, you're the candidate. And it's like, where do you get these people from? And I absolutely disagree with restore and reforms for that matter, local candidates. We need the top people in the country to be running this to sort this mess out. We don't,
Charlie Sansom was saying, just wipe everybody out that has been before, and we need to get the new people in who understand it, who have lived experiences, who fully understand what is happening and how they can represent, their constituents. You need to be able to understand and have had lived experience to be able to speak out. But also you need to understand the political sphere, and to try and merge the two of those sometimes can be quite tricky, because some people don't want to speak up. They can talk about their experiences in life, whether it's been with the police. I've had experience with police and their failings. I've had experience with the NHS and their failings, the school and their failings. I mean, everything systemically is fucked, basically. And it's true. It is failing in every area. And we need, like you said, the cream of the crop of people to start fighting for this country. And that is where I'm going to leave it, because I think we've done a long time. We've done 2 hours and you must be exhausted. But I want to thank you so much for your honesty. And I want to thank you for coming on and sharing what you've experienced, what you've seen. And, we can support you. If anything that we can do, we'll be behind you.
I would just like to say, obviously, I would like to see a merger. I just would hate, or some sort of cooperation. But again, there's like this issue of what we're going to do about the Conservatives.
Yeah.
Because they are just a massive lump of people as well.
Yeah. On that note, thank you so much, Catherine. It's been a pleasure. Good night and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. 2 hours in. There was me, nervous as hell. I've done it. Catherine was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I love talking to her. Like I said, I've known her for a while and we have exchanges, and I think she's a decent human being. And sometimes, when people are throwing hate at someone, it's just totally unnecessary. We need to hold people in regard and hear their stories. We don't have to agree with it at all. We can just sit with it and say, that doesn't serve me, that doesn't work for me, and then we move on. Hatred in the right has to stop. The divide in the right has to stop. And I'll say it once more. Love has to win. And on that note, it's a goodbye for me.